famous Abraham Lincoln that you've all heard about since you've been in kindergarten now comes into being here in your junior AP US history class. We start talking about Abraham Lincoln. And there's an interesting story of how Abraham Lincoln gets to be known, because really nobody knows him, he's very little known, and how he ends up being a presidential candidate in 1860 and ends up winning the election. But nobody really knew him too much before this time, before 1858. Now in 1858, remember our friend, Democratic Senator Stephen Douglas, the man that was looking for a transcontinental railroad, the man that thought that slavery in the Mexican lands we acquired should be by popular sovereignty? Well, he's up for re-election in the Senate in 1858. His term has expired and he is going to run for re-election. And he is really a powerful senator in the United States. Very powerful senator. Now this is interesting because this election for the open Senate seat is going to be kind of a prelude to the presidential election in 1860. It's going to have a lot to do with each other. Now, the Democratic Party obviously is going to go with Illinois Senator Stephen Douglas to run for re-election for the Senate in 1858. Well, surprisingly, the Republican Party nominates a little-known Abraham Lincoln to run against this powerful Douglas for that Senate seat. I don't know what you know about Abraham Lincoln. You probably learned a lot of this kind of thing when you were in elementary. Anybody know what state he was born in? No? No, not even close. Kind of like Andrew Jackson to a point. Not exactly, but in that area, Kentucky. He was born in Kentucky. And he was a little bit like Andrew Jackson. He grew up very poor. He received no formal schooling as a young child. Okay? Lived in the backwoods of Kentucky. But he persevered his early life, and at the age of 21, he joined the Whig Party and moved to Illinois. Okay? So he was born in Kentucky, grew up very poor, grew up without any real formal schooling, survived his formative years, as they call them, moved to Illinois at the age of 21, and he joined the Whig Party. He was originally a Whig. Now, when he was in his early 20s, he ran for and was elected to the Illinois State Legislature. You ever heard of Mike Greer? You guys know who Mike Greer is, right? Anybody? Yeah, Taylor Greer's dad. He's a state legislator. That's what he does. Okay, so that's what Lincoln comparably did. So he got into politics in his early 20s. He was elected to the Illinois State Legislature. Those are people who represent you at the legislature. We're going to make some big decisions actually this spring on financing schools in Wyoming. That'll be a big one. But the legislators are people that are elected from all the different areas and counties, etc. in your state. So he was a state legislator in his early 20s. Well, he got pretty good at that, and he decided he wanted to run for Congress. So he ran for the House of Representatives, representing Illinois, and was successfully elected. So he went from a member of the state legislature to deciding he wanted to run for a national office, and he was elected House of Representatives from Illinois. Well, he served one term in the House, and he set his sights on what? What's the next best thing? The Senate, and that's where we're at here, okay, because it's 1858. So Lincoln was elected to the Illinois State Legislature. He was very successful there. He decided to run for the House of Representatives. He was elected there. He served one term in the House of Representatives and decided he wanted to run for the Senate. Now, this was kind of interesting. How many of you guys are in speech and debate here? Okay, so you'll help me out here. During this race between Lincoln and Douglas for the Senate seat, nobody could believe it. Lincoln boldly challenged the very polished Douglas to a series of debates. And nobody could believe it because who would take on this very polished, well-spoken, experienced Stephen Douglas and stand toe-to-toe and debate him. Lincoln decided he would, and he challenged Stephen Douglas to a series of debates. Now, do you think Douglas accepted his offer or declined it?
Accepted.
Eagerly accepted it, thinking, what's this guy's issue, man? He thinks he's going to take me on. I'm a very good speaker, powerful senator. I'll crush him. And so they scheduled 7 different debates in 1858, starting in August and ending in September. So 7 debates were scheduled after Douglas eagerly accepted Lincoln's challenge, and these debates covered 1858, first being in August, last being in September. Now their style went on to become what, Sully? The Lincoln-Douglas debate format that you do. Don't you do that in speech?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, you do that. That's a certain format that was established by these particular fellows. Well, this almost looked like a mismatch because these guys were two opposite characters. I mean, I'll give you an example. Douglas, very well groomed, very well polished, stockish figure, bullish voice. Okay, picture that in your mind. Here's Stephen Douglas. Well groomed, very well polished, very politically looking, right? He's real short and stocky, and he's got this bullish voice that gets your attention. Lincoln, tall, lanky, baggy clothes, unshined shoes, and a very high-pitched voice. They were almost total opposites, okay? So you got Douglas, who's well-groomed. You got Lincoln, who wears baggy clothing and unshined shoes. You got Douglas, who's very polished. Lincoln, who's very quiet. Douglas, short and stocky. Lincoln, tall and lanky. Douglas with a bullish, deep voice. Lincoln with a high-pitched voice. You couldn't have got more opposite. Couldn't have done it. Well, they complete these 7 debates. People go to the polls, and Douglas defeats Lincoln in this Senate race. Douglas defeats Lincoln in this Senate race. Now, who's the best 3A girls team in the state right now? Anybody know? Anybody just stand out as the best one without doubt? Or y'all pretty even? Okay, how about boys? Anybody just like, oh my God? Okay, well, let's say that our boys and girls basketball teams are traveling to play the best team in the state, #1 ranked team in the state. And we play like crazy against them, and we lose by 1. What have we gained by that loss? Respect. That point, people are thinking, holy moly, I don't want to play Portland, either boys or girls, at the state tournament. Well, that's what Lincoln gained. Even though he lost the election, he gained a lot of national prominence because he took on Stephen Douglas and competed well against him. And although he lost by a close margin, he actually gained by becoming more established nationally in politics. And because of his great showing against Douglas in the Senate race, he's going to end up getting the Republican nomination for president in 1860. 2 years prior to that, nobody even knew who the guy was. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Kind of reminds me, it's off task a little bit. I was in D.C. one time, this is many, many years ago. God, it had to be at least probably 12 or 13 years ago, maybe 15. And we were taking the kids to Old Alexandria, where we stay now. And in the middle of the town square were these people, and they were campaigning for some junior senator named Barack Obama for the presidency. We're thinking, first of all, the guy's black, he's got no shot. I mean, seriously, that's what you're thinking 15 years ago. Second of all, who the hell is this guy? Nobody ever heard of this guy. He's running for president. We kind of laughed. The kids thought that was kind of funny. Well, what happened? He ended up 2-term president. And my kids that I had on those trips, we still correspond on occasion, and especially when Barack Obama was president, thinking, God, do you remember when we were down there in Old Alexandria? And everybody's going, who is this fella? You know what I mean? Well, anyway, that's kind of what happened to Lincoln. Nobody really knew him in 1858, but because of his great showing against Stephen Douglas in the Senate race in 1858, he's going to be the Republican candidate for president in 1860. Okay, that's going to take us to an interesting subtopic because old John Brown is going to come back into the. Remember old John Brown we spent time with yesterday? And the next subtopic is John Brown's raid at Harpers Ferry, Virginia. John Brown's raid at Harpers Ferry, Virginia. He's a little bit nuts, remember? Yeah.
Well, I mean, wasn't it a guy named John Brown who made like back the closet
Yeah, this is a different guy. Good.
Oh, yeah.
Way to pick it. No, pick it up though. Yeah, remember we had another John Brown. That's good. Yeah. All right. Remember John Brown? He's the guy that got this group together, anti-slavery guy, abolitionist, and he killed these 5 pro-slavery men, which led to bleeding Kansas and all that business. Well, he decides in October of 1859 to make a second tragic contribution to the issue of slavery in the United States. So John Brown, the man who raised havoc in Kansas, in October of 1859, makes the decision to make the second tragic contribution to the issue of slavery in the United States. What he did is he gathered up another group, 18 total. Gathered up a group of 18 abolitionists, people who were against slavery, and he put together a 4-part strategy in Virginia. And I'll tell you what that strategy was. So in October of 1859, abolitionist John Brown makes a second tragic contribution to the issue of slavery in the United States. Brown gathers together a group of 18 followers, and he puts together a 4-part strategy. 1, he and his men are going to attempt to seize the federal arsenal at Harpers Ferry, Virginia. First part of the strategy, John Brown and his 18 men are going to try to seize the federal arsenal at Harpers Ferry, Virginia. What is a federal arsenal, Charles?
Like an armory or something.
Very good. And who owns that, since it's a federal one? The federal government of the military. So there's an arsenal which is full of weapons and ammunition, and it belongs to the federal government, belongs to the United States of America, and it's at Harpers Ferry, Virginia, and it's the largest arsenal in the country at the time. There are more weapons there than anywhere else stored in the United States. So he picks the #1 arsenal to try to seize. They said it held over 20,000 rifles, muskets, and pistols, and had a market value in today's cash of $7 million. So he's hitting the big one. He's going to try to take this thing over. Now, that's part 1 of the strategy. There's got to be a reason why. Yep.
It held over
20,000 rifles, muskets, and pistols. And it had a market value in today's dollars of $7 million. So he's basically going to go ahead and try to take over a present-day $7 million federal arsenal. Now, that's only one part of the strategy. He's got, obviously, a reason for doing that. Part 2, Brown believed that when he took this federal arsenal, that all the slaves in that area would run away and flock to his side. And when they flocked to his side, what was he going to do? Arm them. He asked what kind of, he was going to arm them. He was going to give them weapons. So part 2 of his strategy is Brown and his men were going to arm the slaves that he believed would flock to his side once he took over the arsenal. Okay, he's going to arm the slaves he believes are going to flock to his side. Now that's going to lead to part 4 of the strategy, but we got a part in between. The third part of the strategy is he and his men are going to take these black slaves and all this weaponry, and they're going to establish a black government in the mountains of Virginia. So he's got these weapons, this is in his mind, he's got these weapons, he's got all these black people that have flocked to his side, he's going to arm them, and then he's going to take them up in the mountains, and they're going to establish a black government in the mountains of Virginia. And what do you think the fourth part is? What are they going to do after they get their government established with all those weapons? What's John Brown going to do with all those blacks that flock to his side, or he thinks they're going to? He's going to wage his own private war against the South. Okay, he's going to take all these black people that he armed with all these weapons, and he's going to have a war against slavery in the South. He's going to revolt, right? He's going to have all these black people revolt and wage a war against the South, his own private war. So, what he does is he gathers a group of 18 followers, puts together a 4-part strategy. Now, strategy only means this is what he's thinking about. I'll tell you what happened, okay? They're going to attempt to seize the federal arsenal at Harpers Ferry, Virginia. It was the largest arsenal in the country at the time. It held over 20,000 rifles, muskets, and pistols at a market value of today's dollars of $7 million. Once he did that, he was going to arm the slaves that he knew were going to flock to his side. After he did that, then he was going to move into a secluded area in the mountains of Virginia and establish a black government. And then he got done with that, he was going to take all those black slaves that he armed, and they were going to go to the South and wage their own private war. Well, he and his followers, which by the way included 5 of his own sons, did attack the federal arsenal at Harpers Ferry. They did, attacked it. And they got in without any trouble. The arsenal was poorly defended. They didn't expect anything like this, and according to historians, it was a pushover to get in and get at the weapons. Okay? So John Brown and his men attacked the federal arsenal at Harpers Ferry. It's poorly defended. They were taken by surprise, and they had no problem getting in and getting the weapons. What's going to be the problem? Getting out. Because it's like slapping the bull. We've talked about that before. Andy and I and Rachel go out and we decide this bull's kind of not paying attention in the corral. And I said, hey, let's play slap the bull. I'm going to go out there and slap the bull in the butt. And the bull's going to turn around and kind of look at me. Then Andy's going to go, and the bull's going to be a little more prepared and probably chase him out the back of the gate. Okay, so it's easy getting in. It's going to be tough getting out. Okay? Now, the thing that surprised John Brown when he got in is no slaves joined his efforts to revolt against the South. Or against the South. Okay, didn't have any slaves join him. So, he's in the federal arsenal with 18 men and no other help. And who's coming to make sure he doesn't get out? Huh? Actually, the United States Marines are going to come. Okay? So he attacks, he gets in there, he makes it pretty clear what he's going to do. No blacks flock to his side, and all of a sudden now, he's going to be surrounded by the United States Marines. This is basically going to be a suicide mission for this guy if he doesn't surrender, right? You know who's leading the Marines at Harpers Ferry, Virginia? Colonel Robert E. Lee. You know him better as a general in the Civil War. Colonel Robert E. Lee is leading United States Marines against John Brown. Well, when John Brown knew he was in trouble, he kind of retreated to a railroad house that was next to the arsenal. He retreated, he and his 18 men, to a railroad house which was close to the arsenal. And they had a 2-day siege going on. Okay, who was sieging who at this point, though? Robert E. Lee and the Marines were laying siege upon John Brown and his men, who were hiding out in a railroad house. For 2 days, they fought back and forth, so to speak, played cat and mouse. Well, in the end, 10 of the 18 men were killed, including all 5 of John Brown's sons. So 10 of the 18 rebels, so to speak, were killed by the United States Marines, including 5 of John Brown's sons, all 5. He surrendered to Colonel Lee. He lived. But his 5 sons were killed, along with 5 others. So it was an absolute disaster for John Brown. Now, when Brown surrendered to Colonel Lee, Ryland, what do you think happened to him? What happened to Brown after he surrendered? Porter, what do you think happened to him? What did they do when he surrendered? Well, they're good guys. So what did they do? They arrested him. And then what did they do after they arrested him?
Tried it.
Tried him. And then what did they do after they tried him? Convicted him. Okay? So he was arrested, and he was tried. What was he tried for? What was his offense? Had a girl. Treason. He was tried for treason and convicted. And what was his sentence, Alexa? Ow. Hell no. They're gonna hang him. Okay, he's sentenced to hang. Okay? So Brown was tried and convicted of treason against the United States. And on December 2nd, 1859, he was sentenced to death by hanging. Now, we'll get to that a little bit later, okay? Because we're going to watch a really good fictional video story on the Civil War that starts out with John Brown's trial and his conviction and his hanging. So we'll leave it at that, okay? All right, now we're going to talk about a very important election in American history, and that's the election of 1860. Because whoever wins is going to inherit what?
All the problems.
And which is going to lead to what? Yeah, he's going to inherit a civil war. That's what's going to happen. Although you don't know at the time, maybe not a good thing to win was the election of 1860. So the election of 1860, kind of an interesting election. Well, during this election process, the Democratic Party met to choose a presidential candidate. And the party was split. Because what is the demographic or geographic area of Democrats at this time? Where do they live? Some live in the South, but also many live in the